All right, today we're jumping into a really dense and honestly fascinating parable. It's all about trying to find truth in a world that's just full of performance. But this isn't your typical hero's journey. The story calls it an inverted journey, a trip down through failure to find what's really holy. Okay, let's dive in.
Right off the bat, you get the feeling this is going to be a raw, inescapable confrontation. I mean, the quote says it all. No masks, no armor, no rituals to fall back on. This is about a moment of pure, unavoidable truth, all happening inside a tiny stone cell.
So here's the setup. We have our knight, who's being guided by the shimmering violet coin on a personal quest to find just one meaningful act. But his path takes a turn. It's not a solitary search anymore. He comes face to face with the high priest, a man who is just drowning in a crisis of faith that he's been hiding for decades. Okay, so this first chapter of the story is called The Cell and the Candleflame. The source material calls it the third dance, and it's basically a meeting that's been deliberately set up by this mysterious figure, the Jester, to force a reckoning and just break this cycle of delusion everyone's been living in.
This right here frames the two of them as perfect opposites, doesn't it? You've got the knight on this active, outward search for meaning. And then you have the priest who is just trapped in this passive, internal silence, staring at a blank page where his sermons are supposed to be. They're both completely lost, just in very, very different ways.
40 years.
Just let that sink in for a second. For 4 decades, this high priest has been going through the motions, right? Leading the faithful, performing all the sacred ceremonies, all while feeling absolutely nothing inside. Spiritually empty. That number just gives you a sense of the incredible weight of his despair.
And who's orchestrating all this? The Jester. But he's not really the bad guy here. He's more of a facilitator. He's evolved from what the story calls a truth-telling monster, someone who just forces truth on people, into a witness who creates the space for others to find it on their own.
Okay, so let's move into our second part and see how this all builds, because this is where the encounter gets really, really deep. The knight starts to see his own struggles, his own doubt, reflected right back at him in the man sitting across the room.
And here it is, the core connection. The knight's agonizing outward quest for God, it's just the other side of the coin to the priest's long, terrifying silence inside his own head. They are both wrestling with the exact same emptiness, what the story calls the shared rot of institutional power and personal doubt.
So, you're probably wondering, how did they both manage to survive this long? Well, it's through this incredible concept, the muscle memory of faith. It's this idea of just going through the motions, performing the duties of your role to build a wall against that inner void. It's a coping mechanism, for sure, but it is not a solution.
So this is the turning point. The knight finally realizes his quest can't be won with a sword. His armor, his sense of duty, his entire performance, none of it is going to work. To find that true thing he's looking for, he has to drop the act and, as the story says, spend something real of himself by confronting the priest's doubt and, in doing so, confronting his own.
And all of this leads to the philosophical climax of the whole parable. This is where the entire idea of what is holy and where you can even find truth gets completely flipped on its head. The story really forces the knight and us to ask this fundamental question. Is the divine something that's way out there in some distant, abstract heaven? Or is it something much, much closer to home? And here is the profound answer the parable gives us. The holy isn't separate from us at all. It's found within us. The body isn't just a container. It's the primary instrument, the meeting place where our spirit actually connects with the world as it is, with all its messiness and struggle.
This revelation creates what the story calls a new geometry of truth. So, first, your spirit isn't some static thing you just have, it's the act of asking for meaning. Second, the holy is found in real, physical struggle, not empty ceremonies. And third, no amount of armor can protect your heart from what the text calls the blight of revelation, a truth that makes you completely vulnerable. So, how does the knight even begin to accept this radical new way of seeing the world? Well, this is where the Jester's role gets even more interesting, through a really subtle but powerful shift in his approach.
You see, up until now, the Jester has been operating in what's called the void register. You can think of it as the voice of cold, hard, absolute truth. It's a voice of judgment, and it's final. It's kind of a necessary first step, but it doesn't leave any room for vulnerability.
But here, in this cell, the Jester switches to the ember voice, And this is a completely different frequency. It's a tone of confessional warmth, of shared experience. It's not about judgment anymore, it's about connection and creating a space for new possibilities.
And the effect is, well, it's transformative. The knight is no longer a subject being judged from on high. He's recognized or named by the jester and another character, the gargoyle, as a fellow participant, another instrument in this incredibly difficult search for meaning.
And in this moment, the knight finds the answer to his original quest. That meaningful act he was searching for, it wasn't some grand deed on a battlefield. It was this, reaching a state of pure, unfiltered honesty in this tiny room. The violet light from the coin in his hand basically confirms that this was the only real destination all along. And so, we come to our final section. The knight has been fundamentally changed by this whole encounter, and as he gets ready to leave that cell, he is not the same man who walked in.
I mean, just look at how his entire perspective has shifted. What he used to fear the most, the silence of heaven, the absence of God, is no longer this terrifying void. It's been completely reframed. Now it's an invitation, a space that's calling on him to seek a true thing for himself outside of all of the kingdom's performances.
This is what the story calls his full name, the result of his entire journey. So who is he now? Well, first, he's a witness to his own life, not just a performer in a role. Second, he stepped out from behind the monument of just being a knight. And third, he's finally ready to act, but now from a place of genuine, hard-won truth. And as he stands on the threshold, two powerful symbols just confirm his transformation. That heavy violet coin still in his gauntlet, that's the physical proof that his journey was real. And the final ring of the jester's bells, it's not a judgment, it's a verdict. It's an affirmation that he has found his true path. And that brings us to the end. You know, this parable is about a knight in some fantasy world, but its core question is deeply modern and personal. So the question to leave you with is this: what armor are you wearing? What invisible performances define your world? And what would it take for you to find your own honest self?